Hello and welcome to the March 22nd edition of This Week in South Carolina in Session. I'm Gavin Jackson at the Statehouse in Columbia. Well, House and Senate lawmakers just wrapped up their week here, having a little bit of a busy schedule today. We saw Senate lawmakers back in action this morning after a late night debating the liquor store bill that went to about 11 o'clock last night. The lawmakers gave a key third approval reading today of that bill, which would effectively double the amount of stores, liquor stores, an entity in South Carolina could own from 3 to 6. Now that number 3 is still kind of misleading because we did see the Supreme Court throw that rule out last year, and so far since then the state has been operating under about a moratorium of 3 stores as lawmakers figured out how many number of stores a licensee could own. So we have more details about that because it is kind of a complicated bill that deals with population size in a county and how many licenses an entity can own. So more details on that. But over in the House, we saw a bill move to the House floor today that would prohibit folks from driving with their cell phone in their hand. Now, you might remember that we have a texting and driving ban in the state, but some say it's very difficult to enforce, including law enforcement, because people can easily say they were not texting, they were just holding the phone in their hand while driving. Well, this bill would prohibit that and would fine people $100 for the first time if they are charged with that. So that bill moves to the House floor. I spoke with Representative Bill Taylor, that's his bill, about this, and he said that he expects to see some debate on it, some hefty debate on it, but he says it's a bill that needs to get done since so many people have died in the state from distracted driving. There's been an increased number of accidents, and insurance rates that all South Carolinians have paid have been going up because of all the accidents due to distracted driving. So everyone who is driving in South Carolina is affected by distracted driving, and he's trying to fix that. We also saw some activity on a bill that would help kind of foster the growth of the wind industry in South Carolina. It's kind of a nascent bill right now, but it's moving to the House floor as well, and would help start getting some things moving in terms of helping secure investment and grow investment of wind energy in South Carolina. This is interesting because we've been talking about solar this week, we've been talking about SCNG and nuclear, so this is not really related to that, but it is just related in the sense that it's another energy bill that we're seeing crop up this year in the State House. So more on that in a minute. And also, who won the Senate versus House softball game last night? I'll give you a hint. The Senators were still in session last night when the softball game was going down, so you can probably do the math on that one. But let's get right into this DUI-E bill right now. I caught up with Representative Bill Taylor, who just saw his DUI-E bill pass out of committee to the House floor. He expects a floor debate on this bill, but says due to increased deaths, accidents, and rising insurance costs to SC drivers who are footing the bill, he doesn't see any other option except to tackle this issue.
We have a texting bill, you know, that passed in 2014. It was watered down to the points of where it's $25. And if you say to the officer, no, I wasn't texting, I was looking at my GPS, then there's nothing he can do unless you admit guilt. That's why we only write about 1,300 tickets a year, the whole state. You could write that in a couple of hours easily in a real bill. So this bill just simply says this: put the phone down. It's a hands-free phone. You can still text if you have to. You can still talk on the phone. Everybody does. But you have to do it by speakerphone, a Bluetooth, or something like that. And it's not a very difficult proposition if you think about it. Just put the phone down. Here's a concept. Drive, and don't kill anybody along the way.
And like I said, we did see the Senate send that bill dealing with the liquor store licenses to the House today after they gave it third reading. The House did not pick it up immediately because Representative Jonathan Hill objected to that, which was kind of a little bit of a thorn in the side of leadership because they wanted to take up this bill in some extent before House lawmakers go on furlough next week. Because once they get back that first week of April, things really start to move, especially since the moratorium that we were talking about, that 3-store moratorium, lifts on April 5th. So if there's no bill passed by the House, passed by the Senate, and signed by the governor by April 5th, that moratorium lifts and there can be an unlimited number of licenses given to entities in South Carolina to open liquor stores. So that's why there was such a rush last night in the Senate to get that bill second reading, to get it third reading today and send it to the House. Now I'm going to break down a little bit about what was in that Senate bill, and I'm going to read you what was in it because it's kind of very complicated about what happens here. So right now, entities can own 3 licenses in counties under 250,000 people. So that does not change. So if you're in a small county, which we have 46 counties in South Carolina, most of them are small, most of them applies to this. But if you're in a county above $250,000, an entity can only have 2 of its allowed 6 licenses in that county. Now, if they already have 3 licenses in that county, they are allowed to have another 2. but that 6 license has to be in another county. It can also be in a large county, it can be in a small county, doesn't matter, but that 6 license would have to be in another county. So this was somewhat of a compromise bill hashed out by senators last night in concert with the big liquor and small liquor lobbies that were really pushing for more clarity on this bill, because that's really who it's going to affect. However, a lot of folks who were on the Senate floor last night were kind of peeved by how this was being worked out, especially since they said that a lot of consumers were left out of this debate. So a lot of details going back and forth on that, but we still have to see it play out over in the House, which will be back the first week of April. And Representative Greg Duckworth saw his bill dealing with wind energy production move out of the House LCI committee this morning. It's kind of a wonky bill, but what it does gets the balls to start rolling on the Public Service Commission's ability to start setting up some guidelines to establish guidelines for energy investment from wind farms and wind energy. So far, that's not really in place, and he wants to start seeing that ball move. Doesn't expect wind energy to take off in the state for another couple years, as many years as maybe 10 years, but he does want to start seeing some of that activity, just because we do have a lot of wind turbine manufacturers in the state, and we do have a lot of manufacturers related to the wind industry located in the state. And should South Carolina ever have wind farms, he expects them to be off the coast of South Carolina and also out of sight. So not too much of a worry there of any eyesores on the horizon while you're at the beach, because he does know that we do have a pretty large industry here of tourism, because he's from the Grand Strand, so he knows a little bit about that. So they definitely are making sure that they're taking the right steps forward and trying to secure the investment for wind farms in the future. But let's talk with Representative Greg Duckworth right now about his bill that now moves to the House floor.
Well, right now the South Carolina Public Service Commission, prior to this bill being introduced, doesn't really have a mechanism to even consider offshore wind in their program, and so this would afford them that opportunity to consider it for the future. The big thing that I want to point out in reference to this bill is that the offshore wind is a huge resource here in South Carolina that presently is untapped. But we look to the future with this bill to help till the soil, if you will, so that when the rates for conventional energy intersect that of the offshore wind, that garden has been prepared. Mm-hmm. The other thing I want to point out that this is a major economic development platform for South Carolina, not only in its opportunity for jobs, but also that this particular bill is done without any subsidies, which I think is important, and it's also pro for the ratepayers. The different manufacturers in South Carolina that work in the wind industry right now. You have the world's largest drivetrain test facility here in the Charleston area. So you have companies from all over the world bringing their next generation wind turbines to be tested here in South Carolina, which puts us, quite frankly, at the forefront of wind energy research in the world and the opportunity for an energy renaissance here in the area.
And the House softball team, known as the Amenders, defeated the Senate filibusters last night in their annual softball game 11-7. Now, the Senate was actually filibustering at the time, so they couldn't be on the field. I know that's kind of surprising, but if you can believe this, same thing happened last year where the Senate was still in talking about the roads bill. So there is precedent here, and the Senate really came through and upheld that. But what we did see was, again, the House defeating the Senate. The Senate staffers were playing in lieu of some of those Senate lawmakers. It was pretty chilly out there, so I'm sure some of these guys were happy that they were inside talking about that liquor bill, which is now over in the House. And hopefully it doesn't get amended. We don't know. We don't know if they do. They're going to have to send it back, and it could get messy. So I don't know if they'll live up to the name of being the amenders when it comes to the liquor bill when they come back in April. So we'll see about that. But like I said, the House is out next week, and the Senate will be in. So we'll be focusing on the Senate. We'll be spending some quality time with the Senate, especially as they continue to work through the $8.2 billion general fund budget. Now, that budget is still being hashed out in Senate Finance Subcommittee meetings and Finance Committee meetings right now. So it's still the nitty-gritty phase. But that's what they'll be on next week. But you know what? We still could see some fireworks on the Senate floor, so that don't tune out just because we're talking about the budget next week. There could be some activity on the Senate floor. That's what I've been told. So I don't want to ruin the surprise because, you know, it could always change, but we expect to see some activity on the Senate floor next week. And remember to stick with SCE TV throughout the 2018 legislative session as we continue our march towards Sine Die on May 10th. Now you can stick with me every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 7 p.m. live on SCE TV's Facebook page, our YouTube page, and my Twitter account at Gavin Jackson to catch these video recaps of what happens up here at the State House. You can also check out the State House Daybook on SCETV.org. That publishes every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday and has a great consolidated legislative meeting schedule so you can know what's going on and where, as well as the agendas and the links to watch these meetings if you can't attend them. And it also has the State House headlines from around the state and from multiple publications that cover the State House daily. Also, be sure to listen to the South Carolina Lead podcast. It's our weekly podcast that I host with reporters from the Post and Courier as we talk about issues that lawmakers are facing up here at the State House. That drops every Tuesday, and you can easily subscribe to that podcast on your iPhone going through the podcast app and searching South Carolina Lead. And also make sure you watch This Week in South Carolina because we are back this week with Charles Beerbauer at 7:30 on Friday night on SCE TV stations. And also listen to South Carolina Public Radio every day, especially on Fridays when you catch the State House Week Roundup by Russ McKinney. I'm Gavin Jackson at the State House in Columbia.